R3DWhoop4K. Let's get this guy built. Alright guys, now that I just made a huge mess on my desk. So this is the R3DWhoop4K. If you're interested to see my overview, the video is right there. You can check that out. But in this video, we're going to go ahead and build this. So with that, let's get straight into it. So go ahead and remove those 4 screws and remove these 2 screws on the bottom. If you're going to flip open the canopy, I suggest loosening the screw underneath my thumb. And these are a smaller screw here. And once that's out, this whole camera canopy comes completely out. So 6 screws, put that to the side. So now we can see this is where we're going to be mounting our flight controller. There's rubber bushings right here in these 4 corners. Flight controller goes there. We're going to mount our camera card here, and obviously we're going to mount our motors there. So the first thing I'm going to do now, once that's out, is I'm going to mount these motors. And the motors I'm going to use are the Brother Hobby. These are the 1103 8000 kV motors, and these come with a teeny tiny little screw here, and they also come with the non-standard pin. They also come with the non-standard pin header. This is not going to fit on most boards. I don't know why they do this, but they do. So what we're looking for is, this comes with 2 longer bolts and 4 shorter bolts. We want the 4 shorter bolts, and put these to the side. These are our prop bolts, so we want those. And these should turn with, I believe this is a 1.5 millimeter. Indeed. So there's that. If you're interested, these tools rock. I got a video about them there. Highly recommend them. Go ahead and pop your motor in there. And we want the, I'm going to put the motor wires kind of facing this way and then around and up. I believe that's pretty good. These wires are so long you can pretty much hit anywhere. What's nice about red frames is the screw holes are usually very tight, so you can actually go and screw into the carbon nylon first, just to get the screw started, or you can hold the motor in place and just kind of screw until you hit the threads. I usually tend to hold the motor in place. You do want to use great care that you're not going to strip out the threads, but you can kind of feel the difference between the carbon nylon and then once you do hit the motor. And then once we get them in there, just kind of cinch them down a little bit. We can go back and do kind of an X pattern to seat them fully. Okay, once those are in, go ahead and make sure that we're not hitting the stator with these, and we're not. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go tighten this one, tighten this one, tighten this one, and tighten that one, just in kind of an X pattern, just to seat the motor. And I'm really only going like finger tight with these. You don't need to crank them down too much. And then that's it. So I'm going to repeat this process for the remaining 3 motors. So there we have it. That's all 4 motors installed. I went ahead and dragged the motor wires into the frame of the quad. So I'm going to set this aside quick. So next we're going to install the camera, and the camera I'm going to install is the RunCam Split Micro. This is the Split 3 Micro. This is a 1080 camera. You can put 480 in this frame, but I have this camera, and I believe they actually manufactured this camera housing for this camera, so it fits beautifully, absolutely beautifully. So to do this, grab the smaller of the screws that this comes with, and these also turn with the 1.5 millimeter hex driver, and just run through the sides here, and I'll show you in a second. And just snug that a little bit. And as you can see, there's a little channel here where the camera can move both front and back and tilt just fine. So we want to snug these just a little bit, and then we want to adjust our up tilt, and then finish them off with a finger tight turn. So if the quad is like that, that's probably 20 degree. So the other thing that we want to do is make sure our camera is straight in the mount, and that's why I said just give it a little bit of a snug. So the nice thing here is you could push the camera all the way forward, or you could push it back for a bit of protection. And there we go. Once you've got it nice and straight, and you figured out your up tilt, which will be about right there, and I can just adjust it later. Go ahead and snug these guys down. And we just go in finger tight with them. Just like that. Okay, so now this is ready to install. We're gonna put that off to the side. What they do here is they have a plug, so we can plug this in, or we can cut this and mount this. I kind of like this idea. This is, usually I don't like these plug styles, but this will allow us to plug this in and take this thing apart fairly quickly. Cool. Yeah, I like that. All right, so once that's all set, I'm gonna put this to the side and come back here, and we're gonna install the flight controller next. So this comes with hardware. We're not gonna need it. That's the way red quads are set up. They are already in there, you can see them. So with this guy, because they use the non-standard plugs on the T-motors, we're going to remove these and solder direct. So to do that, without a hot air workstation, I've got, this is a, I think this is a T15 ILS, and this is a really small tip, but as you can see, I can reach all three at the same time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply heat across all three pads at the same time and pull with a gentle pressure. And once that's heated up, this should come right out. Just like that. And just so you know, this is not the most ideal way to do this, but it works. If you are not running these motors, you will not need to do that part, but there we go. We have all our motor plugs are taken off, so we're gonna solder those direct. We wanna orientate this towards the front of the quad, and what I'm gonna do, because of the way these are set up, is put the USB down. So the front of the quad is this way, and as you can see, our arrow faces this way, so that's correct. And we want to slip our power wires down through the bottom. And let me pull these motor wires out of the way. The quad actually bends in position to get this in. So get one corner in, and then you can kind of bend the arm down and work in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion. and get each of the corners into their respective slots. And corner 3 and 4 are never super easy, but they will go. And you want to line everything up with the center of the rubber piece there. Just like that. And then I like to straighten my antenna back out a little bit. Just like that. Okay, so now we can access our motor wires right there. So I'm going to bring these up through here, flip this over here, and then I'm going to clip these probably about a 1/4 inch from the Molex, and I'm not going to be really using these Molexes, so it's not a big deal. Clip those guys off and toss them. Then you can go and strip these 1/16 of an inch. And we're definitely going to want to pre-tin these. And to do this, I'm going to bring the quad hands back into the picture. I'm also going to hold it with the quad hands. Hold the quad with the quad hands. Just like that. So, do this in there. And then we're going to pull a third arm to hold these wires. While I pre-tin them. And hopefully this is not too close. Okay, this works out for you guys. So, pre-tin these. And once these are pre-tinned, you can cut them shorter. Okay, now we're going to take these and land them right onto these pads here. Okay, so I have changed soldering tips. This is the FM2032. This is a micro iron, and this is going to make these a lot easier. What I'm going to do here is just go ahead and pre-tin these motor pads. So you don't need a micro iron this tiny, but it makes this type of work so much easier. All right, so I've gone ahead and pre-tinned all my motor pads. Now I'm going to take a pair of pliers and I'm going to land each one of these. I am going to switch back to the hotter of the irons. The micro iron is great, but I think it's going to take a little bit too much to heat up on the motor wires. So I'm gonna switch back to the FM2027. And what am I using in this? This is the this is the T15 ILS. This is a conical tip, very fine tip. I gotta clean the tip of this. A very fine tip iron, but it works good for this intricate work here. Just the micro iron worked a little bit better for these guys. Okay, once you've got everything pre-tinned and cut small, this is not easy to do. You want to use great care not to melt the frame. And we just want to go ahead and land these on each pad. And it doesn't matter which you put where. If the motor direction is not right, you can fix that in Betaflight, in BL Heli, or you can just swap any two of these wires. that's how that's done. So I'm going to go ahead and solder the rest of the motor wires on, doing the same thing. I'm going to come up right in the corners here. I'm going to do a little bit of twist, pre-tin, and land on the pads. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll get right back with you. Okay, so now that our motor wires are landed, we can go ahead and pre-tin the pads for the VTX and for the camera. I think what I'm going to do here is run the camera off of VBAT, and I'm going to run the VTX off the pads. So let me go ahead and pre-tin those. I'm going to try to do it with this iron here so you guys have kind of a fighting chance. Not all of you are going to have a micro iron. So we're going to want the 5-volt pad, and yeah, this iron will do just fine. The 5-volt pad right there. We want the ground pad, which is right next to it. Not enough flux. Then we want the in and the out pad, which is right next to that. There's the out pad, and there is the in pad. And again, be very careful with these. Like I just bridged the 5-volt and the ground. So if you do that, go ahead and get a clean solder tip and then just wick right in between the two pads, and you will get exactly what you need. So as you can see, if I draw this up nice and close, you can see those two pads, the ground and the 5-volt, are no longer bridged. So that's what we want there. And I'm also going to hit this T2 pad. The T2 pad we're going to use for smart audio. And let's do that. Okay. So the VTX I'm going to be using is the TBS Pro 32 Nano. This is a 25 to 400 milliwatt VTX. And it's also got really tiny soldering. So the first wire we're going to put in is the power wire. The power wire goes all the way over here to the right. And I'm not going to pre-tin. They pre-tin the wires from the factory, it looks like. But I like to just place them through the holes here and hit it with solder. And that seems to work the best for me. Get a nice solder ball on it, and it's good. Nice in place. The next wire we're going to want is the ground. And the ground, I believe, goes right next to it. These, I really need a magnifying glass out here. So the ground goes there. Be careful not to bridge these two. And the trick to that is a nice clean tip. Just like that. And if you're worried about it, oops, let's not screw up my power wire there. Okay, so that is the ground. Next we want our video wire, which is going to be our yellow wire. We're going to put that second to the left, right there. Just like that. And finally, the smart audio wire, which you can do whatever color you want. I'm going to do that in green. That goes right there. So we're looking for the S, the V, the G, and the VBAT symbols. And it's very tough to see. So one trick that you can do with something like this is if you got a good cell phone, go ahead and take a picture of the VTX. And once you get a picture of it, then you can revert back to your phone and blow it up so you can see closer. And that's usually what I do. That's what I had to do here because these are tiny and I don't remember off the top of my head which ones are which. So instead of blowing stuff up, we're going to use that. So there we go there. Next step is to get a piece of VHB tape. Okay, we don't need a ton of this. I just cut like a little 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square and stick that on the back. You know, a lot of people say they don't like the quad hands or they don't need it, or they'll just use a piece of what are people using? Blue tack. I like this because my desk is waist height. This is up here, nice and intricate. You know, almost where I hold my sticks when I fly. So this is nice. And I've got extra arms and whatnot. So there's that. So I'm gonna put this guy right kind of underneath these motor wires, right on the center of the flight controller. And then cinch it down. And that guy shouldn't go anywhere. So now, I'm gonna take my wires, and move them off to the side so I can access what I need to access. We're gonna power this first. So first we want, it looks like all our wires are gonna be crisscrossed. So I don't like that, but it is what it is. So we want to cut these to length, strip and pretend. And we only need a little bit, 1/16 of an inch, something like that. There we go. Makes a difference if you get a clean iron tip. That time it was not clean and it took a little while. So because we pre-tinned these earlier, you don't need to do it now. I'll take this one and put it right on our 5-volt pad, which is right there. Tuck that wire out of the way. Next is our ground. Same thing, figure out kind of where that's going to go. And I like these cutters. These are the Hakko's precision cutters, and they are definitely precise. So like that, I just kind of pulled too much of the coating off, so I can get in there and really just cut this right in half, which will be perfect. Right about there, just watch your finger in the end of it, and that's it. So now we're gonna take this guy and land it right on the ground pad, which is to the right of the power pad, and use caution here because we're gonna be really close to the nylon. I really should be doing this with a pair of tweezers, but this is what's out. So that's on there, but I want it to be on there a little bit better than that. I'm not getting the heat transfer that I quite want. So what I did was I put a little bit of solder onto the tip, and there we go. There's the heat transfer. Okay, so that's power ground. Then we want our camera in. So camera in is our next wire. We're gonna run that right here to the iPad. there. Nice clean tip. And we're going to take this guy and place this right onto the iPad for in. Excuse me, the O pad for out. Oops. And don't do like I just did. And bridge them. Okay, so there we go. We want that on the O pad for out because it's going out to the VTX. And finally, we want our smart audio, which is going to go over here to the T2 pad. And this one, I'm just going to pre-tin and leave off to the side until I get my camera wire attached. So we're going to leave that there. So what I'm going to do here is this camera is going to sit about like this. This wire is going to sit about like this. So I want roughly this much cable. We can pull that guy off. So this is going to be our power ground and video for our camera. And I'm going to take that time right now to pre-tin and solder these guys on. And usually it's a good idea to not solder over a flight controller like this. This is very, very bad. What happens is you will get little solder balls and whatnot that can fall onto your flight controller and muck it up. I trust my solder. I usually don't have that problem. So those are pre-tinned, as well as our VBAT wires. So what I'm going to do here is connect the power and ground to VBAT for the camera. And to do that, I'm going to start with the video wire right here, because let's finish one spot before we start on another. So this wire is going to come in, so we want this on the iPad, where I almost screwed up before. Okay. Now that that is set, drag this over and out of the way, and we can land our smart audio wire. And the reason I did that is just so I'm doing pad for pad, and I'm not going to have to solder in between two pads. I think I can pull it off, no problem. I'm just trying to show you guys the easiest way to do it. Okay, so there's that. There's T2. So our line of wires goes power, ground, video out to the VTX, video in from the camera, and then this is T2 is our smart audio wire. Now I'm going to land these camera wires. This is to power the camera. I'm going to run these off of VBAT. Anytime you're going to do something like that, just verify in the literature. Like, this camera is good for 5 to 20 volts. So I know I can safely run that off of VBAT. And I always like my cameras to have as much voltage as possible. The reason being is because if your battery sags or something like that quick, if it sags below the rated output of, like, say 5 volts or something like that, the camera will run its reboot cycle, and that takes a while, and that's long enough for you to crash. So if you can run it off of one of these, like VBAT pads or something like that, you don't need to worry about the momentary loss of power, because even at like the 5 volts, it's like, say you're at 7 volts and it dips down to 5, you still are within the operating range of the camera, so you should not end up in that reboot phase where the camera shuts off for a brief momentary second. Now, these are already pre-tinned. I'm just hitting that with a bit of solder. Same thing here. Run this guy over, and I should really be using tweezers. Run this guy over here and just hit it with a bunch of solder. Just hit it with heat. And once that joint liquefies, then your wire will be set. So the reason a joint like this will happen is we're not getting heat transfer. So we would just add a little bit of solder, and that will transfer the heat into the joint, just like that. And if you start getting those ice cream cones like I just did there, that means we don't have enough flux. I'm just going to add a little bit of solder into this joint here. There we go. We want a nice shiny joint like that. And there we go. That's our camera wire, and that's our VTX connected. So what I'm going to do now is connect the antenna to the VTX. And these little UFL connectors are a pain in the butt. This might have been easier before I attached it to the flight controller, but that's all right. Now what you can do here too is you can take a little zip tie and run it underneath here, and then just zip this antenna in place. I actually might do that because it's fairly easy for these things to come off, and that will at least keep the antenna attached to the quad. So the next step is to go ahead and remove the Roflex. There's 4 bolts along the back here, these little guys here, and then these are the probably about 12 or 18 millimeter nylon standoffs, and there's 4 of those. One there, one there, one there, one there. Go ahead and remove those, and then we're going to concentrate on this. We got to remove this cross member. So to do that, we've got 4 screws on the inside here. There's one here, there's one here, one here, one there. Go ahead and remove these. The reason we need to do this is to get the camera wire tucked in underneath. And you might not need to do that. On my quad, I need to do that. The reason being is the camera card, there's this Molex where this comes off, but they have glued it down. And I don't know what kind of glue they used, but I happen to like that it's glued down, and I don't want to mess it up. So I'm going to keep it as is, and I'm just going to remove this cross member. And these are very tiny screws. You need to apply a lot of pressure to them so we don't strip them out, which I think I might have done. Alright, I'm gonna hope that I can still get this with 3. So as long as you can get 2 of these out, you can kind of slide your camera wire through there. Or if you're lucky enough, you don't need to do this at all, and your camera can just disconnect. So we're going to pull that back a ways and just check. Okay, so I can fit a wire through that. And if I can get this one as well, we're in luck. Perfect. So back these off about a 1/4 inch, and you'll feel the cross member kind of come loose. Just like that. That's perfect. And then we're going to need to remove this Rowflex strap, or maybe not remove it, but loosen it, which we're going to have to do anyways. So to do that, I take a screwdriver, stick it through there, and just kind of pull it back. And then you can pull it right out. Just like that. And just like this. Perfect. And this is attached on each side. So we can tuck that off to the side. And now we can get our camera wire through that. So we're going to, once again, so now to do this, go ahead and put the canopy over the top of the quad. We're gonna fit the camera in place, just like that. And then we can run this underneath. Okay, like that. And right like that. Perfect. And as you can see, our camera wire is uninhibited there. I got my up tilt set. Once that's good, you can go ahead and mount the camera. Just these 2 front screws, push it in and up as you're tightening these down. Cinch them down finger tight. Remember, this is a little tiny 2M screw. Might even be I think it's a 2M. Finger tight. Perfect. Okay, now that that's set, we can screw our cross member back on. Same thing here, finger tight. Again, there's the unfortunate bit about stripping a screw out. Yeah, it's like kind of stripped, and that's not Red's fault. This is not the best screwdriver. I did not buy it with precision in mind, so it will occasionally strip out screws. Okay, that's all 4 of those tightened back up. Now we're going to take our camera card. We'll move our power cable out of the way. Take our camera card, and you want to note the orientation of the SD card. So I try to put the SD card in a place where you can access it. And the difficulty I'm seeing here is this is going to be in a situation where it's not going to be super easy to get out. Might be able to put it in and out there. The other thing that we want to note is the buttons, which are right here and here. I can access them this way. What I would like to do is turn this, and I don't think the camera wire is going to be quite long enough to manage this. It might. It might. If I push this right here. Yeah, see, that's putting a little undue stress. So it is what it is. Not the ideal way that I like to put it in, but that's fine. This will go like this. And we can have no stress on the camera cable, because this is the camera cable is very, very small wiring, so we don't want to stress that. I can access my buttons. I might be able to get a camera card in and out of there. If not, might be annoying, but I think I can do it. So I'm gonna roll with that. Sometimes we need to make sacrifices. So then we got our Roflex. And this guy, you can either put, yeah, I think this is the best way to put it, with the camera card facing this way. Now, this does come with a bit of a card protector. If we're gonna use the Roflex, we might not be able to use it. And in this case, this might make this really difficult to get the card in and out. So I'm not going to use this. But in normal cases, you would just run your screws through this to get the card in and out. You pick this up, put the card in, and then it will snap and lock into place. For this build, I'm not going to use that. So I'm going to take this Roflex, place this over like this, kind of line up the holes, and start it with a screw. Just in one of the corners, just like that. And I got another corner right there. Just like that. Okay, make sure the motor wire is not going to get pinched in the card, which we're good. And as we do this, I like to put these bolts on. I don't even think you can classify these are bolts. Put these nuts on. Just get that finger tight, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and run the remaining bolts in and get right back with you. All right, so off camera, I made a couple of changes. I did cut the zip tie that I put here, mainly because the screws for the camera cards are right here, and that was getting in the way. The other thing that I realized is the canopy is going to kind of cinch this antenna down, so it should not be an issue. The other change that I made was I flipped this camera card so that the SD card is at the back. You can access the buttons here, right here and here. And let me move this guy out of the way here. Yeah, so you can access one button right there, and you can access another button right there. Then the issue that I ran into with the initial way is this wiring would cover up our USB port, and we want to be able to access this USB port. So there's that. The other thing is, here's our power plug. This is what we had soldered to the flight controller. So what I did there is I brought it through there, I put it through here in between these ducts, and then brought it up through the back by the USB cable there, and then off the camera it came off this way. Plug it in together, and then what you can do is just kind of tuck this guy right inside underneath the flight controller, and if you want, you can put a very tiny zip tie through here, capturing this motor wire and that, and even if you wanted to, you can add this, your main battery leads, and just cinch that out of the way. You don't need to, but you can do it if you'd like. So as I stated before, that frees up the camera card. You can access the SD card a lot easier. You can still access these buttons by finger or by tool. You can access this USB. The one thing to note is this camera wire is fairly taut now. And really, that's the only two orientations that you can put this in, and you're kind of forced into really a 30-35 degree camera up tilt. I guess you can get a little less out of it, but it is what it is. I mean, this is, it's not super taut. There's still some, like you can see if I move this Roflex out of the way, there you go. You can see I can still move it. I just don't like having it that taut. I would have liked a straight run, but this is acceptable. You know, that's just run cam not giving us enough wire. But again, it was blocking this, so that's our really only chance. We could maybe flip it the other way, but we're dealing with the same thing. It's just then the wire's coming this way to this side. So it is what it is. The other change that I had made was the motor wires. I had moved to run down and around this cross member here. And what that did was, instead of running this way, it kept it from getting squished underneath this camera card, because there will be a little bit of flex and vibration, and I don't want that chewing into the motor wires. So just run them like that. And then these ones were fine the way they were. So those were the only changes I made off camera. The only thing that's left to do is to mount the canopy and go fly this thing. Well, I do need to tune it. I do need to set it up in Betaflight. I don't think I'm going to make that video. There's a ton of Betaflight setup videos. But if you guys do want that video, let me know in the comments below, and I will surely make that for you. Betaflight 4.1 just dropped, so I'm probably going to put this quad on there, and we'll go with that. One thing I do want to note about these quads and Betaflight 4.0, a lot of people, both the large quads and the small quads, a lot of people have trouble in Betaflight 4.0, and I really think that it's an issue with motor poles. It's not something anybody discusses ever that I've seen in any Betaflight setup videos, and it's not really in any tutorials. And I tell you what, it's a very important thing. When setting up Betaflight, there's no option, and maybe it's in 4.1, I don't know, but it's in the CLI. You need to access it through that, and it's a, you know, it's a command line. It really should be a dip switch or something where you can just write the number of the motor poles in there. But anyway, the issue that you run into is if you don't have the right motor poles set up, the filtering's not going to work properly. And a little quad or a big quad, a beast class, something like that, you need to change your motor pole numbers. The 5-inch quads are all similar motor size, so they're going to be okay. But yeah, so these I believe are 12 pole, and the way you do that is you count the number, and I'm not going to do it because it's kind of a pain in the butt to do, but you count the number of magnets on the bell, and that tells you the poles. That's how many poles a motor has. So that's what I think is going on. People aren't adjusting that value, and it's throwing the filters off, and that's what's giving everybody hot motors and excessive D-term. So I think that's what's going on there. But again, if you want that video, I will make it. Just let me know in the comments below. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I am missing a screw. I don't know where it went. No idea. No idea where it went. The good news is I really don't need it, but I would like it. So I'm just gonna roll with the video right there. I'm gonna find it at some point in this mess, and I'm gonna put it in. But aside from that, that is the completed R3DWhoop4K. And I know I got a 1080 camera in there, but this thing looks awesome. Absolutely awesome. I got a set of props over here. I don't know what color props I should put on there. I got blue, green, purple, and yellow. So let me know what's your favorite color. Maybe I'll throw it on there. But I think with the red, I think this is gonna have red props. Yeah, red. Yeah, so all in all, a fairly easily quick build. This took me maybe an hour and a half, mostly because, you know, setup and filming and all that sort of stuff. And then there were a few things that I went back and changed around. Like when I reran this motor wire, I had to completely pretty much remove everything because this screw is stripped. So I had to pull the flight controller out to have enough space to fit the motor under there to make that happen. So I basically rebuilt this quad twice, I guess. But I mean, it's easy. It's easy to put together. It's easy to work on. The only thing I don't like is the shortness of this wire, and that's more of a problem with RunCam than I think with Red. But it is what it is. I mean, you know, you 2 screws here, and then you can just slip it out there. So there's that. What I would have liked to have done is move this card under here and use this 20 by 20. And the reason I didn't do that is because of this USB. And it might, if you look, the 20 by 20 card kind of overextends where I'm talking about. And I'll use the side of it. You got the mounting holes here, and then you've got the edge of the card. Well, you got the mounting holes here, and then you got the edge of the card. And I think it would overlap over this USB. So that's why I didn't do it. I didn't even bother trying because it really doesn't look like it's going to work at all. But that would have been nice because then we could remove the weight from back here and remove the weight from the rear 2 motors. And this thing would be a little bit more nimble. And the battery should last a little bit longer if you can do that, because these motors are definitely going to labor trying to keep the extra weight up. And we're talking minuscule. We're not talking like, oh my God, it's not going to happen. It's, you know, it's like the difference between you carrying a 3-pound weight or not. It's just, it's pretty far back on the frame there, so it's going to add a little excess weight. And maybe we'll get, you know, 20 seconds less flight time or something like that. But it is what it is. Anyway, nice, quick, easy build, well thought out. Things that I love are being able to access the side screw to adjust the camera without doing anything. Being able to remove 4 screws and access your flight controller right from the top. Which will be nice because if you notice where we put this VTX, I cannot access the button to it, so I'll be flipping that up to get to it. To change the camera or whatever, you know, 2 screws, 2 screws, 4 screws, this whole thing comes off. 4 screws, this camera card comes off. The card itself is nice and protected in here. It's soft mounted. If you want, you can clip these guys short, or you can leave them long, it's no big deal. And the SD card, nice easy access. The buttons for the camera card, nice easy access. And the integrated strap, I like this. This is pretty cool. And this guy just goes over like that. Pick the holes you want, and then flips down and over it like that. And then you can stretch this to fit your battery underneath it. So, yeah, all in all, nice little quad. I'm gonna go ahead and do what I gotta do to get this thing in the air now. But that concludes this video. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, click that thumbs up button. If you didn't, you can click the thumbs button down twice if that's your thing. So yeah, and like 92% of you haven't done, go ahead and punch that subscribe button because you only get to do it once and it's fun. And I'll catch you later. Peace.